Rapha revealed they made a £21 million operational loss last year. It's not necessarily anything out of the ordinary for the brand, as it's their 7th loss-making year in a row. However, their latest financial statement does show that their turnover dropped by £8 million compared to the previous year. They say they had 30,000 fewer new web customers last year, and RCC membership dropped by 4,000 people. They put it down to ongoing turbulence and the competitive post-pandemic cycling sector, as well as a decreased consumer confidence in several key markets. But don't worry, it's unlikely that we'll see Rapha going anywhere based on these figures. Independent auditors say it's all good. There's nothing to worry about. They're going to be fine.
Yeah, I just don't agree with this at all.
You don't agree with it?
Yes. Well, no, I agree. I mean, I assume the statement's correct. I just don't see how a company that can run such massive losses for 7 years in a row is allowed to carry on going. And I get that their owners might have a lot of money and can back them, and that's why they're saying there's no risk of it closing down. But from a bike shop perspective, I just feel that there's a lot of other small brands and people trying to do stuff, and these people are taking money out of their coffers to some extent by... So every time somebody buys a Rapha jacket or a Rapha kit, that means somebody's not buying somebody else's kit who's possibly trying to run a business where it's their livelihood, where these guys are just, well, let's just lose 21 million quid in a year, every year, carry on like this, and it just carries on. I don't know. I might be wrong. I might be coming from the wrong side, but I just don't think...
I mean, I would say, unfortunately, that is capitalism for you. They're not a charity. They don't have to... They don't have to...
I completely get it. I just think that
it's
one of those things of... It's just not right, in my opinion.
But the hard thing as a layperson to understand is, how does a business keep going when it looks like they have an operational loss year on year? But it's a bit more complex than that, isn't it? There's actually not that much that we can interpret from figures like this.
The accounts will never show a real true picture of what's going on. They're obviously a very large business. They still turned over, I think it was £108 million, which is an astronomical amount of money. It'll put them as one of the biggest businesses in the country. They're obviously very sophisticated. They've got proper, very significant financial planning there. To an extent, their accounts will be managed based on how they need them to look for what they're doing. It's all it'll be part of their financial planning. If auditors have no concerns, then there's just nothing to worry about. It's how they're running their business.
I read the article. Auditors have no concerns because their parent company will be able to fund them for another year.
Yeah. I think the actual most interesting bit of this, and the only sort of real facts that we have when it comes to what's going on at Rapha, is they say they have 30,000 fewer new web customers than last year. RCC memberships have dropped. So that's kind of a black and white picture of what's going on, isn't it? They're not seeing the same demand for their products as in previous years. And I don't think that this will be anything that's unique to Rapha. It probably, what it shows is the cycling industry downturn isn't over yet.
Yes, I very much agree with that. I agree that is the significant thing here. They still have a lot of customers. They still have a lot of customers that are still spending the same amount of lifetime money with them. They just have less customers, which is what we would expect.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Did you see in the report, how much do you think that a Rapha customer on average spends over a lifetime?
£4,000?
No, £600.
£600, so it's not a lot.
It's not a lot, but I guess...
But obviously in multiples.
If you have 30,000 fewer people, they're not all spending that £600 in 1 year, but if you're not onboarding them, then your
forecasting has to change.
Your forecasting has to change significantly, doesn't it? Yeah.
But this is the thing, they're a very sophisticated business. They will be forecasting for many years into the future based on what's happening now.
Totally.
But this rolls over into loads of other businesses. You get in the normal bike shop industry as well, where you get some online shops go there and they're happy to trade at the less than 5% margin.
Yes, yeah.
And they do this in bulk and they sell these things and they run at a loss and then they all flop, like Pro Bike Kit did, Wiggle did, Chain Reaction, all these places. But every time they're doing that, they're doing another small shop that needs the money to pay for employees and staff are losing a sale to these people.
There's definitely a ripple effect in that sense.
It just shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? They have, businesses like this have deep pockets deep enough pockets to weather storms like that, and they will do stuff like if you have a lot of stock sitting in a warehouse, it's better to make some money off it and get rid of it, even if it's at a tiny margin, even if it's at a loss sometimes. It costs you money to hold stock, and therefore sometimes it's better to just get rid of it. However, as you say, that has a knock-on effect for
somebody else here, yeah?
We have heard some very significant speculative rumours that another large apparel business is potentially on the ropes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that over the next 6 to 12 months.
Cryptic.
We were actually talking about this the other day, and I think just the industry as a whole, and it feels like the businesses that didn't have very well managed cash flow have probably already gone pop.
Yep.
And the ones that do have well managed cash flow are able to weather the storm, but are having a significant decrease. It still feels like we are not at the bottom.
My other thing that I wonder is, if you look at all the numbers, like Ridley was telling us and a few other brands, that gravel's up massively worldwide.
Yeah.
And a lot of the gravel riders don't wear Lycra.
Yeah, totally.
They wear T-shirts. And I mean, I've been wearing tech tees. It's much more comfortable than a Lycra jersey for me. And they cost pennies.
I think it's also probably down to competition. You make a good point. Potentially less people are buying kit who are already into cycling. But also there's so much more competition now, isn't it? Like the rise of the decathlons and that kind of thing. They're like Van Rysel range. This is not an ad for them before anyone wants to start. But having been in there and seen the quality of clothing they're doing for significantly undercutting. And Rapha has changed their business model on that as well, because they used to be premium, and they responded to the change in market by bringing in like their core range, for example. But there's still more businesses coming in who are undercutting and still selling what looks to be a premium product. And I think, again, it's just part of this industry bubble popping.
I do have a theory that I think bike brands are also going to react.
Yeah.
I think we are going to see better value bikes starting to show up, because there'll always be the super high-end bikes. They are never going to go away. But I think that brands are starting to realize that they do need a £500 bike that is good and a £1,000 bike that is good, and they can no longer get away with a £1,200 bike that's actually not that good. And I think we are going to see better bikes, better spec'd bikes and better quality bikes in the bottom end of the price range.
This is something I discussed with the lads came to visit from Zip in 2019, I think it was, saying to them about a lot of brands. They shouldn't forget this, because if you don't have an entry to market item, Mavic was always really good for this, because you could buy a wheel set for £100, but you can also buy a wheel set for £4,000. So essentially, somebody gets that first bike that's not too expensive with their product on it, and they like it. If it's good value and it worked well, when they want to upgrade, like, well, the Mavic worked well, just buy the nicer Mavic wheels, or I buy a low end Giant. It's a really nice bike. I've got a bit more money now. I'm going to buy a nice bike. Just buy a Giant again. If you don't have that, you don't have the entry to market.
Yeah.
So if the bike brands don't start doing this, they're never going to, because it's aspirational for some of the wheels like lightweight. It's very few people buy them because you can't get into that market for under £3,000.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, yeah.
I actually think that's one of the reasons that Specialized have always been so iconic. Is they were always, so many people bought a Specialized as their first bike. I'm an example of that as well. Because even now, I still look at S-Works and I go, I just kind of want one. I don't think I will ever buy one ever, because I can't bring myself to buy an S-Works, especially at the price. But it doesn't stop me wanting one, and it almost certainly will have this kind of connection to when I started riding.
Yeah, they're gonna have to bring out cheaper, but good. It can't be a cheap, terrible bike. It has to be a good bike, because otherwise you're just gonna be like, well, that is terrible. I'm not gonna buy. Why would I spend more money on one of them? But yeah.
That's what I think is going to happen. And perhaps Qs is going to be one of the ways. So Shimano's Qs might be a way that this can then start coming around, because I'm confident Qs is going to be a great group set, and it allow a cheaper, or also the Microshift Sword, which is also a great group set. I think we might see that starting to be spec'd on bigger brands' bikes as well.